Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Trail Trash Podcast. Jason, Garrett, and John. And to say that I am excited about tonight's guest is like a huge understatement. Um, One thing that a lot of folks don't know about me is I absolutely love backpacking, even though I don't get to do it very much. And I love talking to people who hike the big trails, the big daddies, the AT, CDT, and the PCT. So um, the lady we have with us tonight, she has hiked all three of them, which is damn hard. It's damn hard just to hike one of them, but she is a badass. She's done all three of them. Um, she also works for Hoka. So for all those Hoka lovers out there, and for a lot of people who's probably listening to this, probably know her, we have Melanie Harsha. So thanks for being here, Melanie. I appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm so stoked to be here, y'all.
So I guess starting out, hell, I don't even know what direction to go because I've just got, I could, I'm just, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So you just did the CDT in 2023. So let's just back all the way up.
Okay.
What started the whole hiking thing? Like when did you get into the whole hiking thing?
Yeah, so I'll try to shorten it. I grew up in Franklin, which is south of Nashville. I did my undergrad at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. So just living in Chattanooga, I got pretty into hiking being there. I was in college. I was more into other things like drinking and doing some stupid stuff. But I did some hiking occasionally. My junior year, we moved up to Signal Mountain. I did stump jump yesterday, so the 10 miler, and it was kind of cool being back up there, like back to where it all started. Like I love going up to Signal and hiking and running out there. And then I went to grad school at Appalachian State University where I got my master's in Appalachian Studies. And right about that time, I decided that my mom maybe wasn't such a bad person. Like if anybody on here has teenage girls, they might understand this. But I finally realized I did love my mother, and she hiked the Appalachian Trail from 2001 to 2013, 14, as 2016, like kind of a lot, but she section hiked it over a period of 13 years. And she wrote a book. And when she started section hiking the AT, I started going on backpacking trips with her in grad school. And when I did that, I realized I have zero patience. And anybody who knows me will back that up. I have absolutely no patience. So section hiking is just, it's not for me. I have to do it all at once. And so
Mhm.
after I did maybe 3 or 4 section hikes with her, I decided to through hike in 2016 when I did the Appalachian Trail.
So so this is a huge endeavor, and you say it so casually. Um, it's it's a big honking deal. So to get yourself ready, because you say it so casually, how much training did you do to get yourself prepared physically and then mentally for this task? Because in watching videos of people, the mental toll is pretty big from just watching people do it and who vlog it and stuff, I guess you could say. But how did you prepare physically and mentally to tackle something like this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think each trail is so different. I mean, with the Appalachian Trail in 2016, I was, much younger. I was, at a totally different place in my life, and I had a lot of different worries. But I was really mentally prepared for the AT. Like the AT, I mean, as we all know, we all live in Tennessee, so we know that it can be very wet and it can be very like we could get 30 days of rain, which I did. My first 30 days on the Appalachian Trail, it rained every single day. It was awful. And then I had a drought the second half of the of my through hike. So I was much more mentally prepared than physically prepared for that hike. I had only ever done a couple section hikes with my mom. And then the second one, I was really, more prepared as far as like I was walking and hiking a bunch. And then the CDT was the most prepared I'd ever been for a hike. I had the on the AT, I got a stress fracture in Pennsylvania and hiked from Pennsylvania to Katahdin with a stress fracture. 0 out of 10, don't recommend. It was absolutely awful. I was doing 16 Advil a day and hiking from 6 a.m. to about, I don't know, 8 or 9 p.m. It was awful. Don't do it. Your doctor will get very mad at you when you get home. I was on crutches for 6 weeks after the AT. So for the PCT or for the CDT, I was just so prepared. I was doing strength training. I stopped running because I was worried it was just going to injure me. I was just hiking with my pack all the time. And so mentally, I already had it in the bag though, because I had already done the PCT and the AT. So it already kicked my ass enough. Like I knew what to expect mentally. So the CDT was really just physical prepared, whereas the AT is just it's all mental, even though the AT is the hardest. Depending how you look at it, it's the most elevation gain, which most people would say, that is what they say is the hardest. But I mean, you just have to prepare differently, like how you are in your life. I mean, I was, younger, I was 25 when I did the AT. So it just was like, I can do anything, my body can do anything. And, which is why I hiked 1,000 miles with a stress fracture.
So it's interesting you say that about the AT because I heard the CDT was the toughest out of the three due to the amount of or lack of water caches and a lot of the trail. There are not a lot of switchbacks on the CDT that at least from what I've watched, and I may be wrong. So if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me. But I heard there's not a whole lot of switchbacks that can definitely make that a little bit more physically demanding on the CDT.
Yes, please
Yeah, I
correct him.
mean,
I love it when Jason gets
no.
corrected.
I mean, there are a couple switchbacks on the CDT. But there are also, I mean, I would argue that like maybe in the northern half of the AT, they go away from switchbacks a little bit. But the AT is really difficult because it I think everyone underestimates the AT. And I think we can all agree on this call that like we talk to people out west and like our mountains are taller. And I'm always like, our mountains are older. But also like ours are like you're gonna start like 200 feet and you're going up to 6,000 feet. Like you do like LeConte or Mitchell or any of these like tall mountains, and it's like you know and I think we've all probably done some running out west and hiking out west, and they're nice and groomed. We got rocks and roots and copperheads out here, and like it's tough. And the AT, some of the oldest mountains in the world, like they're tough stuff. And I mean, even in northern Georgia, like sometimes they miss a couple switchbacks, and you're like, huh, if I was building this trail, I might just there'd be a perfect place for a switchback right here. Why isn't it here? Whereas the CDT, it's first of all, it's not, finished. It's a lot of road walking. So of course those are easy parts. And then you get to Colorado and you just get your shit rocked because you're just like, what, like I've been road walking and I've been like skirting around these mountains, and then you get to Colorado and it's like, let's just go up Gray's Peak and then we're going to take you on this fun little unmarked route. And it is tough. And I mean, coming from Nashville, which is what, 500 feet? And
Yeah.
then you're going up to, 14ers, 13ers. It's tough in just a different way. But the AT is the hardest. It's just mentally, physically, it's just the hardest. And like, I can't explain it to anybody who maybe doesn't live in Tennessee and hasn't done like SCAR or like the Smokies. Like, I feel like if people have done the Smokies, they know what I'm talking about. Like, it's hard in a way you cannot explain.
So John, why don't you speak up on it? John is a scar finisher.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it in the background here somewhere.
I
So
see it. That's why I brought it up.
yeah, it's rugged. I had a couple buddies a couple weeks ago who went and did the SCAR, and we're talking about how tough the back end was on it. They're going northbound, so
Okay.
on paper, the heavy hitting is over once you hit Newfound, because you look at that
Mm.
elevation profile, and you're like, oh, it's only 50K, it's like 6,000 feet. No, it is brutal and unrelenting, especially once you get into the night section, and it's tough.
It is. It's just like the Smokies are a whole different animal.
So I guess let's try to talk about them each a little bit. With the AT, since that was your first one, I'm interested to know how much different was your pack out with gear different from the AT to with like the CDT? Because I know a lot of people like to go ultralight. I didn't know if you were one of those ultralight folks or if you're more of the standard backpacker that just has like the standard pack and has one of the more standard tents, or how much different did that evolve over the three?
Yeah, it's a good question. Mine evolved extreme, like to each one actually. So the AC, I had a 25-pound base weight. And for listeners who don't know what that means,
God bless.
a base weight is what your gear is without food and water. So 25 pounds is insane. Like when you think about a Nalgene full of water is 2 pounds, and then you have, about a pound or two of food per day. Now, I will say the AT, the most you have to carry is 3 or 4 days of food, unless you're doing really low mileage. So that's insane. That means like I had like extra pair of clothes. I had 2 headlamps in case like one gave out. I had camp shoe. I just had so many things I didn't need. I wonder why you got a stress fracture. Well, that's probably why. And so, I mean, there was other reasons that, I can talk about as well. But so when I got back from the AT, my doctor was like, you have a stress fracture, and if you're going to continue to do these things, you gotta lighten your pack. I was also like, fresh out of grad school when I did the AT. I didn't have a lot of money, and so it was a lot of like just, hand-me-downs from my mom and a lot of whatever was the cheapest. So I went from a 25-pound base weight, and then started the PCT with a 7.5-pound base weight.
Wow.
So that is very light. That is considered ultralight. Anything under 10 pounds is ultralight. And then with the Sierras, with some of my snow gear, it got near like 9 pounds, 9.5 pounds. And then CDT, I was pretty close to that. I think I had a 7-pound base weight, so a little lighter. So the AT I did solo with my dog Radley. She did the first half with me. She did the first 1,000 miles. But she carried most of her own stuff. And then the PCT and the CDT I did with my partner James. So he does carry the tent. But let me just preface that by saying he had a 6-pound base weight on the PCT, even with the tent. So don't feel bad for him for carrying that tent. So
That's
yeah,
all you made him carry with that base weight? That's I'm like, here, buddy,
yeah, I
you
mean,
can
like,
take some more.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, on the PCT, like we just went totally bare minimum, like especially him. Like, I mean, at some points I would argue like dangerous. Like we didn't bring gloves. We used like our dirty socks instead, and we did cold soaking instead of carrying a stove. And I will never do that again. It was a fun experiment. It was a fun challenge. But the CDT, I carried the stove. So our base weights were neck and neck for the CDT.
That's interesting because you see how a lot of people evolve over the 3 hikes. Because I was telling you, I was watched a gentleman do it, and it was interesting because between his first one, he was kind of like you. He wasn't nearly as heavy as you were. But then by the time he did the PCT and the CDT, he was way ultralight with the hyperlight pack and the what's the name of that really light tent?
Z-Packs Duplex.
That's it. You got it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah, that's
it.
the most popular. Yeah.
Is that what you used?
So we use the Z-Packs duplex on the PCT. We actually had a new tent for the CDT called the Durston. And it's nothing against Z-Packs. They're fine. I could, you know, if I have friends using it, I don't have anything against the company, but we really like Dan Durston. He's a good guy. Like, I can email him right now and I'll have a response waiting for me by the time I wake up. And I prefer to use companies that I like have a really good customer service. And um that's all I'll say there. So I prefer companies with really good customer service. And I don't use companies if I've had a bad customer experience, the customer service experience with them. Because if I'm in the middle of, you know, Cuba, New Mexico, and I need a tent, you know, in a few days because like your product has failed, like I don't have time to like for it to go be sent off. So Durston is just like a really good product. And we were really, really happy with that choice. Yeah.
And that makes sense because I've watched videos where someone's tent has messed up or some gear is messed up and they've had to mail it off
Yeah.
and get another one in. And I can't imagine trying to mail off gear in the middle of a through hike and hope it gets
It's
back.
stressful.
So
Yeah, it's really
that's
stressful.
yes. So when you hiked the AT, when you think about the AT and stuff, the different parks you go through, um, wildlife, did you have any crazy run-ins? I know Shenandoah can be kind of sketchy with the bears.
Yeah, I saw a lot of bears on the AT. I mean, it's interesting because when I saw them in the Smokies, like I grew up going to the Smokies, like that's where we took family vacations. But when you see a bear in the Shenandoahs, they're just like different. They're a little bit more aggressive up there, in my experience. I mean, this was, you know, several years ago at this point. But we did come across a bear and we just see this guy like running towards us. And I was like, whoa, are
Oh
you okay,
no.
dude? And he was like, there's a bear behind me. And I was like, why are you running? You must be new here. This is not how we do this. And so then I like look behind him and I see this bear running towards us and I see two cubs. And so like I understand why she's running. It was just a bluff charge. And so, you know, we were making noise, hey bear, and she eventually, you know, went back to her cubs and they went off. But um that was really the only like sketchy wildlife encounter I had. I mean, we saw a lot of black bears. I mean, in the Shennies, like you in the Shenandoahs, you see them, you know, at least 3 or 4 a day. And then a lot of snakes, but you know, I live in Nashville in Middle Tennessee, and then like just random fun fact, my master's is in Appalachian studies and I studied serpent handling churches. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
used to seeing snakes in church and on the trail, but on the AT I saw my first timber rattlesnake outside of a church. So that was cool, you know, and I've seen like, you know, a million since then, but it was kind of nice to see a snake not in a church for once.
Ironically, I've seen more snakes on our greenway here in Murfreesboro
Oh yeah,
than I have on any trail system at
interesting.
all.
Stones
Yeah, but
River.
the Murfreesboro Greenway,
Oh,
the one that
gotcha. Yeah,
runs through
yeah.
like the battlefield, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen more on the battlefield than anywhere because it's funny because I think it seemed like every time John and them would go run either at Fiery Gizzard or Swanee, they would always see some sort of snake or something
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like one of our friends stepped on a copperhead while he was running, but it had some sort of critter in its mouth, so
Mm-hmm.
it didn't get him. It had the critter in its mouth. So I've been fortunate to never come across that. I have seen one or two at Percy Warner.
Yeah,
Um, but hey,
especially in the summer.
Garrett, do you see any out at Smith Park?
Very rarely, if any. I have nothing of note. What's the other park that's kind of Beaman Park? I think they've
Beeman,
got
I
a
see them a lot out
yeah,
there.
yeah, they've got a higher likelihood of sightings out there, is my understanding. So
Mhm.
No. Mm-mm. No.
Yeah,
So
I've
so
seen a couple copperheads out at Beeman, and like when my dad passed away last year, but when Radley was still running with me and out at Beeman, I wouldn't take her in the summer because like when you get on that back loop at Beeman, I mean, if she gets bit, like what am I supposed to do? You
yeah,
know, like
and that's where they all
there's no
are.
service.
So
Yeah.
wow. Remind me to take some snake repellent when I go out to Beeman. So I've
Also,
never
don't tell
actually,
anybody about Beeman. Maybe
Yeah.
I shouldn't have talked about Beeman on this podcast.
I've never been to Beeman before, believe it or not.
Don't go.
Oh,
It's
you gotta
terrible. You'll
go.
absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
No one should go there. It's the worst park in all of Middle Tennessee. It's
I know that's
terrible.
not. I've known that's not true because I see all the Nashville people go out to Beeman all the
Well, they need
time.
to stop. They need to not
Yeah.
go. It needs to be our little secret.
Yeah, there's this place called Percy Warner. Just there. Go
Yeah,
there.
just stay there. It's closer to town. It's better.
It's closer to
I've
town.
never seen a copperhead there. Just go there.
You don't have to worry about where you park there. It's fantastic.
Nice.
Little hidden gem.
So,
So when you did, so it sounds like the AT then went pretty smooth for you because it didn't sound like I mean, other than the stress fracture, it sounds like you kind of pushed through the stress fracture. Other than the stress fracture, you had nothing that was super like catastrophic that puts you in the hospital like you hear
Yeah.
some of these other thru hikers go through.
Yeah, I mean-
John's laughing like, oh, it's like a stress fracture is a big deal. It is a big deal, but like I've seen videos where people are like admitted into the hospital
Yeah.
for like big issues.
now,
I
Yeah,
was
it was
familiar
where
with
was
the
your stress fracture at?
My hip.
Oh, okay.
So-
That's
It's a big
it's
place.
complicated spot. So-
It is, yeah. It was I've had a lot of hip issues. I still get to deal with them. Yeah, but it did go smoothly other than that. I mean, the main part, so the story of the stress fracture, which kind of goes into your question, is like when I first started the AT, like it did go smoothly, like mostly, but I just wasn't hungry. I just really wasn't hungry. And this is a problem with a lot of hikers, but especially women hikers. And like, I mean, I would like have a Cliff Bar for breakfast, like half a Cliff Bar, and then finish it for lunch. And then like would get to camp at night and not be able to finish ramen. So then I stopped menstruating, and then when women stop menstruating, they stop producing like the vitamins and calcium, and so then you get a stress fracture, and that's what happened to me. And it's a huge issue with women. And I had another friend that year who she got a stress fracture in the same place in her hip, and she actually ended up going off trail and then completing it the next year, which maybe is what I should have done. But other than that, I mean, it did go smoothly. Radley, my dog, she made it to about 1,000 miles. I think I said earlier, we got so much rain in the beginning, so like water wasn't an issue. And then we had a drought. So like I can carry all my stuff, but like to carry her stuff, like her water, like it just was impossible when it was a drought. So she had to go home. And so like, that was really tough when Radley left. I really wanted her to be able to thru hike it, but I talk to people now, and I firmly believe that dogs are not meant to thru hike. And that's a whole other episode of a podcast, but it's just it becomes like it's already their hike. And you see so many people who like thru hike with their dog, and they're like, I want the dog to go from Georgia to Maine, and I don't want them to miss any mileage. And like, I mean, if you just look at like the history of people, like we as humans can go very long distances, but that's not how wolves hunt. Like they don't chase down their prey. Like, it's just like totally different. So it just it was a good experience. Like Radley and I were really close after, and then she went home to my parents and like gained 15 pounds, and she was like so happy. But thru hiking with the dog just totally changed it. So I was really upset when she left. And that's another reason I probably got the stress fracture. I did a lot more mileage after she left.
I bet John has a corgi poo. I'm waiting to see John put Clemmy on the trail with him, because I think she's a trail runner just based off her build. She's a little on the small side, but I bet you she could put in some work. So
She can move when she wants to. She has got little legs, but she can move.
oh.
She's really upset what's going on up here. Just getting pets right now.
That's awesome. Dogs are the best. Like Bradley was absolutely the love of my life. So don't tell James I said
Look, us guys, we understand it. I know my place in my, yeah. I mean, like, when my wife and I got together, we each had our own dog. We brought our dogs, and I was always second to her dog. So I'm still second to her dog, and her dog's not
that.
here anymore. So like
You get
yeah, I know my place.
it?
Yep. And I actually have a full blown corgi, and the corgi and my wife are like best friends, and like they literally like team up against me a lot. I know you were like wondering how can a dog and a human team up against you. Trust me when I say they do. Two against one quite a bit in this household. So I'm second fiddle to Daisy quite a bit. So I'm used to it. So anyway, that one went okay for you, other than the stress fracture, which John's laughing about because I
I'm
made
not
some.
laughing about that. I've had a stress fracture too in the second metatarsal, so I'm familiar
Mm,
with the pain. I was coming off a broken neck and I started running a lot
mm.
again, and I got stress fractured from overuse. And then I turned around like a few weeks later and ran like the Ragnar relay in Tennessee when it was still a
Oh
V.
wow.
So I'm
That's
familiar with the
intense.
experience.
Yeah, I'm sure it was awful trying to finish up that hike like that. So you did the PCT next. How did that one go for you? Because you go northbound.
Yep, we did northbound. Yep.
So you did all that desert hiking in the beginning, right?
Yep. Yes. So yeah, it went well. We talk about that hike a lot and really on the CDT too, but you asked about the PCT. So we look back on that hike and just feel so incredibly lucky because every year is going to like change, but we did it in 2018. 2017 was the deadliest year on record for the PCT because it was really hot. And then they got a really late snowstorm and a lot of people died. And not a lot. I mean,
Mm.
relatively, I think 3 people passed away in the Sierras that year. And so, I mean, it's just like you look at all these different years and we just got so lucky. Like it wasn't too hot in the desert. We got to the Sierra and like we had our ice axes. Not that I know how to use it, but I had one. And had our micro spikes. And we really got by like really well in the Smoky or in the Sierras. And then we got to Oregon and there's like all these fires in Oregon and Washington, but it was either like by the time we got to the spot, the trails were opened back up or they were closing it behind us. And like, or they would have already rerouted it. So we were able to go from Mexico to Canada, continuous unbroken footpath without having to do any weird flip flop or having to go make up anything, which is unheard of on the PCT and the CDT. And I
Hmm.
mean, when we got to Crater Lake, I couldn't even see Wizard Island, but everything was still open because I mean the smoke was so bad, but we were still able to go. They closed the Canadian border like I don't know, maybe a week before we got there, and we're like, damn it, like I just literally walked 2,600 miles and I'm not going to be able to tag the border because they've closed the last 30 miles of the trail. And 2 days before we got to the border, a friend was walking southbound because she was having to make up a section from fires and was like, guess what? They opened the border and we were able to go from like unbroken, and that is just absolutely like unheard of these days with how bad fires are getting, with how bad the snow gets in the Sierras. So we just feel so grateful for that hike that we were able to do that.
Yeah, that Sierra hiking is pretty sketchy. Well, at least can be, depending on, like you said, the season and what it's like. I've
Mhm.
seen videos of that where you really don't know where you're stepping because the snow is
Mhm.
so uh deep. I mean, it
Mhm.
it definitely looks pretty sketchy. So, any major wildlife issues on that one? You got different wildlife out west.
No, we saw a lot of marmots, which is awesome. Um, we saw like some black bears, in Washington or in Oregon mainly. We saw black bears, but Yeah, I mean, we did see a Mojave green, which is a really rare rattlesnake, and I was really stoked about that because I'm a snake nerd. And so Mojave greens are really cool. I mean, when I say like they're called Mojave greens because they're literally like a green tint, but you like even if you take videos or pictures of them, you can't quite get the green like you can see it in person. So that was cool. I was excited to see that. I really didn't think that was like possible. Because like I said, they're really rare.
So
But
do you
yeah,
own
just
snakes? Do you own
no,
snakes?
no, no.
Okay.
Snakes belong out in the wild.
Okay.
Or in church. Not that I don't go to sermon healing churches anymore. I was not a member of these churches. I was just, in the back of the video camera writing a thesis.
Okay. I didn't know if you like to handle them because some people really love
No.
snakes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. They're not my bag of chips either. So I was
No.
just curious. So CDT, sounds like same thing, pretty much straight shot, no huge issues with
Yeah.
that one either.
Yeah, I was really excited about that one because we were both really nervous. So we did the PCT in 2018 and then, 2023 was the CDT. So we had like 5 years in between. We were gonna do the CDT in 2020. We all know what happened that year. 2021, it just wasn't just didn't vibe. Like we weren't necessarily injured, but it just didn't work out. Like we just didn't feel right about it. 2022, James had a back injury. I had some hip stuff going on that didn't work out. And then 2023, like in the spring, our dog got really sick and passed away, and it just rocked our world. And we were just like the grief was just so overwhelming that I told Hoka, like, listen, I gotta go. And my boss understood. And I was like, if the job's here when I get back, great. But if not, like, I just have to go do this because we were just so upset. And so we went, and it was the longest mileage trail we'd ever done. We gave ourselves 6 months to do it, and we did it in 4 months and 11 days. So we're really proud of that. But we strength trained like more than I'd ever strength trained before in my life. And I mean, we stretched every morning on trail up until like the end. Maybe like the last month we didn't do so much stretching, but we really were good about like stretching on trail and strength training on trail, which is nuts. Like you do a 30-mile day, the last thing you want to do like the next morning or at night is like, let me go do some planks and but we did it, and we feel really lucky. Like there were some fires that just didn't affect us, and we just met some wonderful people. So I would say that the CDT is my second favorite. AT forever in my heart is my first favorite, but CDT is probably my second favorite.
Of course, you got to go with the Beast Coast.
Yeah.
So
Gotta.
Real quick, do you have a trail name? And if so, how did you get it?
Yeah. So my trail name's Peanut. I got the trail name on the AT around Fontana Dam actually. I had a friend I was hiking with at the time, and he was like, yeah, you still don't have a trail name, which even though it's a couple 100 miles in, like most people get it like the first or second night. He was like, what about Peanut? Like, you like really like elephants, and elephants eat peanuts. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's the reason I want it. But growing up, my grandpa always called me Peanut, and most of my family called me Peanut. And so I was like, that works. I love it. And so we went with Peanut.
that's awesome. So Hoka, how did you get involved with Hoka?
Yeah, so in 2016, I'd come home from the AT, and I had this master's in Appalachian Studies. And to backtrack, before I did the AT, I had planned on getting my PhD, and the church I had been studying had disbanded. And I honestly didn't know what I was going to write my dissertation on and what I was going to do my PhD research on. And I was just tired, y'all. Like, I mean, I had gone from like kindergarten all the way up to grad school with no break. And I was like, I just need to take a long walk. So I retracted all my PhD applications and went on the AT. And when I got home, I just wanted to pick up a job until I could save up enough money to go do the PCT because I was just like obsessed with thru hiking. And so I started working at Mountain High Outfitters in Franklin, and worked there for a few months. And then it turned into a year until I saved up some money and went on the PCT with my partner, James. And then I came back and moved in with James. So we have a house in West Nashville in the Nations. And I started working at Cumberland Transit, which is the oldest outfitter in Middle Tennessee. It's awesome. Been there since 1971. So they have everything from trail running stuff to hiking stuff, just a little ad there for CT, but I just, Cumberland Transit is like, those people are my family. So I will always shout them out. So I worked there and I quickly became their social media coordinator, event coordinator, and co-women's buyer. And I had been a Solomon ambassador for several years. So I had ran in Solomon, I'd hiked in Solomon, I did the PCT in Solomons. I was a Solomon girl through and through. And the Hoka rep gave me a pair of speed goats. I went on a run in them, and the next day I emailed Solomon saying I couldn't represent their brand anymore. And I switched over to Speed Goat and switched over to Hoka. And 2 weeks later, the Hoka rep moved to Raleigh, and she said, "Hey, you should apply to my job." And I applied to her job, and I started with Hoka 4 years ago yesterday.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, John and Garrett actually wear Hokas. Obviously you listen to the show, so you know what brand that I wear.
Yeah,
It's the running joke. It's the running joke while I'm injured right now.
Is that pun intended? Running joke?
Yeah, it is. I am a dad. I'm here all week.
And I've actually been favoring Solomon a lot more lately, but my one question about Hoka, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you get this a lot, is the Speedgoat Evo
Oh, here we go.
the greatest trail shoe that Hoka has ever made?
I'm gonna leave. I'm heading out. I'm just kidding.
I know Hoka keeps trying, but they've never made a Speedgoat that's quite like the Evo. Are we ever going to see? Are we ever going to see it again?
So I can't answer that question without getting in trouble. So,
Okay.
well, to the full extent, I would say don't ever lose hope. And we are well aware that people love the Evo Speed Goat. I will say that when they came out with the Speed Goat 5, they utilized most of the same foam components. So the midsole is actually almost the exact same as the Evo Speed Goat in the midsole. Obviously the upper is not the matrix upper. But yeah, I mean, I know people love the Evo Speedo. This poor guy finished stump jump yesterday in the Evo Speedo, and people were going up to him like, "Where'd you get the speed?" It's like, dude, he just finished a 50K. Let's just, people always love the Evo. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is like, we hear you and don't lose hope. But if you look at Hoka and you look at our lineup, we definitely like to throw it back every once in a while. So we always can tell our product team your thoughts, and we'll tell them.
Yeah, no,
we'll keep telling them. Yeah. I will say, without spoiling too much, look in June and July for the Speed Goat 6. I've been testing it, and it's a really good update.
Yeah, the Speed Goat 5 is actually what I ran like the scar in, but
Cool.
I still swear it's just not quite the same.
Yeah. It's funny, like I know Cumberland Transit still to this day, they'll get calls from like, "Hey, I'm in, wherever, Washington or Oregon, like, do you have the people will go down the list of Hoka retailers and call and see if anybody has the Evo Speedgo. But it's been 3 or 4 years since we came out with that shoe. So even if you find one, the EVA might be shot. But best of luck to you.
Just so you know, Melanie, John's been waiting for somebody from Hoka to come on our programming so that he could ask that question. The joke in our chat group was, when are you going to ask that question? And John had his opening and he took it because
I promise I will keep telling product team that people want the Evo Speedgoat back.
so I've never put my feet in them. So, but
That's
they
probably why,
obviously
you've had like the world's longest case of plantar fasciitis too.
Wait, you've never put your foot in a Hoka at all?
one time. And so
What
here's how
year? What year was that?
here's the story. So I started running in 2014. I trained in Saucony. I don't know what it was. It was one of the
Probably like
best.
the Freedom ISO.
Freedom ISO. Damn, dude, you got a good memory. That was such a great shoe, by the way. So I ran in that till it messed up, and I wanted to try a different shoe. And I had that rock and roll coming up. And everybody was like, "Oh, you got to try the Hokas. The Hokas is where it's at. You got to try some Cliftons." And so I was like, "Okay." So I went down to Fleet Feet in Green Hills, picked up some Hokas, and went out on a run, and literally pulled a hot spot on both of my feet on the arch up at the top part of my arch on the inside, and and I had that race coming up, and I was like, I can't run in this shoe if it's going to give me blisters. So I took them back, got my money back, ended up, of all shoes, picked up a pair of New Balance Fresh Foam shoes and ran my first marathon in those. And then, don't ask me why, but I got turned on to Ultras from somebody. I'm not even sure who it was. It was somebody who was like, "Oh, you got to try the Escalante." So once I got into Escalantes, I fell in love with Ultras. Like that was my shoe. And from that point forward, I've always had my feet in some sort of an Ultra from the Olympuses. But I want to try Hokas again because I need to probably try something different. I just don't know what, when, and how.
Well, lucky for you, I'm the Hoka rep and I do about 5 demos a week sometimes. Next week I have 4. Some weeks I have little or none, but especially when we have a new launch, like we're demoing on trails and I mean, I always tell people like look at your local groups and stuff like that, but like, I can tell you the run groups in Nashville Monday to Sunday when they are and when I'm going to be there. So right now we have a lot of road drops, and then we usually do more trail drops around Western states, so that the speed goat will come out around Western states. But yeah, I mean, you just let me know when you usually run, and I can tell you when I'll be demoing. But that's why demos are so good because like people can go and test out the shoes. And then I send them to a local retailer to support somewhere local. And that's like what I love about my job is like I will never send you to Hoka.com.
Oh no, I mean we it's safe to say that the three of us love us some Cumberland Transit, and that the nails
And
are
Fleet
just
Feet?
are great people, and Fleet Feet. We definitely support the one here locally and stuff. So I
Yeah.
think, for me, I'm definitely interested in trying something else because I've been in ultras literally like for so long.
Yeah.
Monica Moore, Monica at Mad Cow. Oh yeah, that's our buddy.
She is an
Monica.
angel. I
Oh, I
love
know, isn't
her.
she? Yeah. So she told me to try some topos, and so I've tried some topos, but I don't like those.
Oh,
So
really? That's what I would have
yeah,
put you in too.
yeah. I mean, they're similar, but they feel weird. They're
Mhm.
just like so far my favorite shoe I've ran in lately. Road shoe was the Via Olympus, but obviously I'm not ran in anything else, so I have nothing to compare it against.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I was told the Cliftons are great. Um, my buddy Will keeps telling me I need to try like some Cliftons or something like that, and he said that I probably
Yeah.
would like it. So
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff with Mad Cow, and I mean, I have 96 accounts. They're all great. They're all my favorite. Not just Cumberland Trend, Natural Running Company, Mad Cow Running Company. They're all so great. And I do demos with them all. So yeah, you should come out and test a pair of Hokas out. And Monica Moore, her dog's name is Hoka.
Oh, I know. Trust me. I know.
Mhm.
I know.
Mhm.
So funny
And,
story.
and real quick, I was going to say shout out to Monica for completing her first 100K yesterday at Pistol.
Yes, I know. I need to text her. Yeah.
And so, with funny story, the three of us actually, started with Monica when she started running. We all started in that run group here locally.
Cool. I love it.
So, so, so anyway, I've been like monopolizing like this whole freaking program. All right, guys, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gary. Garrett's probably sitting there like, I wish he would shut the hell up so I can talk. So,
Look, you told everyone you were going to nerd out. I knew you were going to nerd out. I'm like, look, let's let Jason have his little moment here. So, I mean, I really don't I guess the only thing that I would be curious about is now that you do all of these events, you're would I guess you would consider yourself more of a hiker than an ultra runner. Um, but they do go hand in hand. Uh, how has your hiking experience compared to your ultra running experience? How has one benefited you for the other, prepared you for the other? What lessons have you taken from through hiking to ultra running and vice versa? When you were doing the AT, you mentioned that you had such a high base weight. In between the finish of the AT and your next through hike, did you pick up ultra running then? And did that maybe change your mind on how you kind of pack for these things? Kind of dive into that, the relationship between the two, the pros and cons, I guess, of the two there.
Yeah, it's a good question. So between the AT and the PCT, I didn't do much. Like I really was just I had really bad post-trail depression after the AT because I was like on crutches for 6 weeks. I didn't have any money. So I was just like really focused on like making money and like walking a lot essentially. But I only had like a year and a half in between the two. Whereas like between the PCT and the CDT is really where I found running. So when I started working at Cumberland Transit, I started going to Crazy Owls, which is a local run group on Monday nights that I go to. If I'm in town, I'm there. And so you can either hike or run. And so I just hiked. And then I realized like, wait, I can hike and run. So it's like you can hike the uphills when you trail run. I didn't know that. And I was like, that's so great. And so I started getting into it like with Crazy Owls. And then Jason Fennell, who's one of my closest friends, he's one of the most important people in my life, and so is his wife Amber. And we became just such close friends with them and started realizing like to support our hiking habit, we could do the same amount of mileage in a shorter amount of time because work gets in the way of hiking. Like if I'm going to go to the Red Trail, which is 5 miles at Percy, and I hike it, that's going to be 2.5 hours where I could just go run it in an hour and still get this mileage and still stay in shape. And so I started realizing like I don't have to be fast. I can just like run when I can. And so then like it started developing from there. And then on my 29th birthday, I hiked 29 miles at Percy. And then like I started slowly being like, well, maybe I could run it faster. Like if I just hike 29 and like this amount, like, in like 10 hours, maybe I could run it. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And then COVID hit and all these virtual things were happening. So I did the Yeti challenge twice. I did the 3-part challenge that Thomas Lindsay came up with. So I did Montgomery Bell, Beeman, and Percy all in one day. And so I just started running more and more. And then after the CDT this last year, I came home and just immediately started running, did Bell Ringer, did 33 on my 33rd birthday, and then did stump jump 10-miler yesterday. So the reason I haven't like signed up for anything bigger is because I'm like worried about the cutoffs. But I think now I realize I could probably, especially some of these like easier. I don't want to say easier because that's not what I mean. I mean more, not as intense cutoffs. Like a 10-hour cutoff for a 50K, I think I could handle. 7-hour cutoff for a 50K might be a little bit more intense, but yeah. So, and I mean, I just became close with all these ultra runners, like with Jason and Amber, and it was just like I love being at races. And the problem is I work for Hoka and we sponsor most of the races in the Southeast. So when you sponsor all the races, you can't run them. So I joke with Brian Gages all the time. I'm like, one of these days, I'm just gonna have to not sponsor your race so I can run it. Yeah, we will always sponsor Brian races, but so I probably won't ever be able to run one of them.
So why
Well,
don't you
we've
just
seen
cancel?
you. Yeah, we've seen you at our fair share of races, and I will say you are always an incredible bright spot when we come into an aid station. If it's the Hoka aid station, if I know that Hoka is going to be there, this was back when before you did your most recent through hike. I was like, you know what? That means Melanie's going to be there. Her spirit's going to be there. She is the most uplifting person when you come into an aid station. So thank you for just being a bright spot. And I'm sure that you understand what runners go through as a through hiker who just needs that bright spot, that one little bit of sunshine can make a big difference in someone's race or through hike in your case there. So I didn't want to get off, and I know we're not necessarily close to wrapping it up, but I didn't want to the opportunity to say thank you for being you and being out there come and go without me saying that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I love being at races. If I could be at a race every weekend, like running it or working it, I would. Like, I just when people come through the aid station, I want to make sure they leave the aid station running. Like it absolutely breaks my heart when people, especially at No Business, when they come through the Hoka aid station, and especially when it goes the direction where we're at 86, we're like at one of the last aid stations, like, or is it 76? Whatever, like at the later one, when people
That's
DNF
the
at the
Bandy
aid
Creek aid
station.
station. Yeah.
Yeah. So when people come through that aid station and they DNF, I cry every time. Like, I don't want people DNFing at my aid station.
My wife, so I've done No Business once, done it twice, finished it once. So I go back this year to go
Cool.
the direction where you guys won't be 86. You'll be 14
Yes.
or 20, 24, whatever it is. I think it's 76. But yeah, so my wife had got me through. She shoved me through, and then I saw you at the aid station. You're like, keep going. I was like, perfect. I'm good from here until some things happen along the way, but whatever. I do much appreciate seeing you guys at 76 instead of 14 or 24. I like seeing you guys at the end of the race. But no, that's a great aid station, the Bandy Creek one there. So
It's fun. It is fun whenever it's at 76 because it's at night, and sometimes we might get a little too rowdy at that aid station when it's 76. So I feel like we're a little bit more with it when it's at mile 14, whatever it is, 24. Yeah. So yeah, it's fun. We love No Business. We love Brian and Shelley.
yeah, we sing their praises a lot. So yeah.
So the answer is you just take a marker and draw like a little mustache and call yourself Michael and like pull your hair up and then tell them you're not working with Hoka and tell them you want to sign up to run.
I'll just do that.
That way you can run the race. So yeah, I've actually, hopefully, if I can get my foot right, I'm going to do the short Yamacraw.
The 20K.
Yeah, whatever the super short one is, that's the one.
Or there's also a 10K, but
no, I think I think I'm doing the 20K. I think I picked the one in the middle. So
sweet. I'll be there. We love Yamacraw. It's fun. My partner's gonna do the 40. It's a 40 miler this year, so it's exciting. And I think it's interesting. I think it's actually a really good distance. Like, Brian was like a little unsure about it, but I think it's a really good distance, maybe for somebody who's done a 50K and they're not so sure if they want to do a 50 miler. And I think it's a really good. But yeah, Yamacraw is always awesome. Big South Fork, like. Yeah, also don't tell anyone about Beeman or Big South Fork. Anybody listening, don't go to either of those places.
Yeah, Pickett State Park's a terrible park. It's don't go up that way. Just avoid it. It's terrible.
Go run the Smokies with John. John was just saying how he wished he saw more traffic when he ran the Smokies.
He said he felt so alone in downtown Gatlinburg.
Right.
Yeah, I think the Smokies is the least visited national park, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you should definitely increase the foot traffic there. So what is the big takeaway for you from all of this, all of your through hikes? Now that you're this Triple Crown, what is the big takeaway? Like, what was the one thing that you learned on each of them that you still draw from on a hard day? Like when things are just hard and you're just like, you know what, today sucks. What's the big takeaway but I did this on this day on this trail? Or what's your biggest life lesson that you learned what about yourself while you were out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna sound really cheesy, but just like I can do hard things and I can work through it. And I think that's like, to answer your earlier question, like that's how it translates to ultras. Like everything is like temporary and like I can work through a lot. And maybe there's some things that I shouldn't have worked through in the way I worked through it, like the stress fracture. And like I know we can all, relate to that from being injured from ultra running. But I I think like it's really I was brought up in a family where like it's really good to challenge yourself, and it's like if you put your mind to it, like you can do hard things and you can work through some things that you didn't even realize you could. And a lot of things that have like been out on the trail like translate to here. Like, a few months ago, my biggest problem in life is like that it was raining and I like had to go in this like expensive tent and I like don't have a job. And it like at the time it just seemed so like, oh, it's been raining for 3 days in Yellowstone. But then you come back here and you're like, now I have like different problems, but I know I can go through it. And so it's so funny when you're on the trail, you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to be home and I want to go like eat hot chicken and have a cold beer. When you're like out, like, you're here and you're eating hot chicken and you have a cold beer, all you want to do is be back in that tent in Yellowstone when it's raining. So, I think like you appreciate it so much more. So even when I'm out there, even though I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish it wasn't raining. I wish I was back in Nashville. You're like, but what if I was back in Nashville? Like, I love Nashville. Nashville is my home and I love being here. But when I'm out there, I just like the mountains just feel like home every time, in like a way that, that when you're out there, it's like, that's the only way you can explain it is like when you're out there in that tent, when it's raining, you're just like, this is it. This is home, even though I wish it would stop raining because I have to pee and it's 11 at night.
So what about, and this will be my last question, what about advice for anyone that is thinking about either doing any of the big through hikes, anyone that wants to do a Triple Crown? Where would you recommend they start? And we'll say that they have a base knowledge, like they're not just someone who's like, yeah, this sounds really cool and I have no clue what to do. Someone who kind of understands, okay, this is the stuff that I would need to take. This is blah blah blah. Where would you recommend that someone start if they really want to pursue this? Is there recommended reading, or do you just say, okay, go down to the terminus of the in the south here and kind of section off a little bit and then be like, okay, this is what it would be like. Where would you recommend someone start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so individual for each person and everyone is going to be at different places in their life. And when people ask me about like training and all this, like usually I just say like the only way to train for a through hike is just to go through hike. Like you really can't recreate that at home like you can with an ultra race, probably, like we can go out and train. But I think studying and researching in the way that makes you happy. So like I don't like YouTube. It's just not my thing. Like I like James could sit there and watch like hours of it, but I love podcasts. So I listen to all the AT podcast, all the PCT, all the podcasts. If you're a reader and you like books, there are so many books about through hiking, including my mom's. So, but there's so many great books and there are books on tape or, what are they not on tape? I feel like that ages me on Audible or whatever. And so whatever it is that you like is going to be how you're going to research, you should do that. And I always tell people that you're going to carry your fears and then you'll probably get rid of it. But if you're scared of bears and carrying bear spray makes you sleep better at night, great. That's fine. Like you should carry the things that are going to make you sleep better at night, because if you don't sleep well on the trail, you're not going to hike well. So, making sure you do those things, is really what's going to get you through. And even though I'm ultra light, I feel better prepared with a 7-pound base weight than I ever did with a 25-pound base weight. So carrying everything you need and nothing you don't. And if you have, 1 or 2 luxury items, like I carry an iPod Nano. That's my luxury item filled with podcasts.
I don't know if you
I
really
didn't
call
realize
that.
they
I
still
don't know. I
made
don't know if
those.
you call that a luxury item. I mean, they're like what you can find it for like find those things for like $50 now on like eBay.
Yes, that's true. Although we'll say it's always interesting to hear people's luxury items. I actually didn't take my Nano on the CDT. I took a pillow instead. But like James will tell you his luxury item is toilet paper because he didn't take toilet paper on the PCT. So he added a couple ounces. So, you know, it just depends. Like whatever makes you sleep at night, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. But you know, like you know how everyone says, like, if I could do it, everybody can do it. Like I really do believe that, like in this sense, like if you set your mind to something and you really want to do it, like I think that's all you need to know, and the rest will come naturally, especially on the AT. There's so many people out there, and there are town stops, and you're right. Like I think going out there and doing a section, you know, I always tell people like there's like really nice sections like around Roan Mountain, like that, like it's like 1 or 2 days. Or if you really want to know what the AT experience is like and you are up for a challenge, do SCAR. Obviously don't run it. Well, you could run it if you wanted to, but you know, do that section and you'll really get a nice little taste of the AT.
Sure.
All right. Well, I guess at that point we won't chew up any more of your evening, but we appreciate you coming on and telling us your story. I'm in awe of anyone that can through hike one. You through hike times three. That's just absolutely amazing. So really appreciate you coming on and telling us your story, talking about some Hokas. I promise you I will try some Hokas.
I'm trying. Will's trying. I'm trying. Like, I'm gonna get him in a pair. No.
Yeah, it's you know it's been a challenge pulling out of what I've been in, but I will put my feet in those. So again, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you so much, y'all.
Yeah.
so
No,
so before we sign off, real quick, big shout out to Camille Herron who set some records this weekend.
I'm clapping, that's that noise.
have to shout her out. She did some big stuff, set some records like Camille does. Don't know if she was in Hokas, but big.
She was not. She did. Last I looked, she was at 435.88, in a pair of Lululemons.
I would not wear those shoes, but anyway, that's her choice. But
We
big
missed
shout
her.
out, big shout out to her for doing that. And last but not least, happy Mario Day. It is Mario Day. I got my Mario shirt on. So anyway, that is it. We appreciate everybody. There'll be video and audio for this. And until next time, we will see you later. Everybody have a good night.